Where am I speaking to you from today? Are you in LA?
I'm in LA, yeah. I'm going back to Tokyo tomorrow, but I was here to do a music video and do a recording and getting ready to go back, and I'll still be on Japan time, hopefully.
Guess, yeah, I think it's probably like quite early in the morning in LA as well, so I appreciate you talking.
Oh, no problem. No problem. Yeah.
I mean, so I've been listening to the new album Drama listened to it a few times over the past few weeks, and I had it on this morning again. And I think one of the main things that strikes me is like, how do you get into the headspace to compose, that kind of music, that really epic, grandiose music that we're used to hearing from you? And I mean, are there days where you just wake up and it takes longer to get to that headspace, or is it really just you're in work mode and you just get there? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Um, I don't know if it's a matter of getting in the headspace. It's more of a matter of getting out the music that I'm constantly hearing just on any given day. I'm hearing stuff like what you hear me playing is kind of like what's going on in my head. So how do I translate that into something that other people can actually hear is pretty much the process. Um, Sometimes I wish that I was hearing simpler music in my head. um, but yeah, that's the thing. I'm constantly hearing these themes and motifs. I'm trying to always find the most effective way to get people to hear it where they feel as excited about it as I do when I'm hearing it. It's like, oh, I want people to hear this. I want people to hear this. And then I have to actually make that music. So making that music is a long and complicated process, but it starts just from hearing this kind of stuff all the time, just walking around doing mundane things. I'm hearing this music.
Is that something you've always had? Like, is that something you've had since you were very young in your teenage years and you picked up a guitar, or is that something that's kind of grown with you over the years?
I think it's grown more um, as I've made album after album after album. It's grown more. I used to struggle more with trying to come up with music, but as time goes on, it just seems like there's an endless supply of ideas. It's just a matter of having the vehicles to make them realities. You know what I mean? You only really release one album every, year or maybe 2 years or something.
Yeah.
So you got to make that kind of like the greatest hits of what's going on in your head, if you will.
No, that's an
Um,
interesting way of putting it. Yeah.
yeah.
And I mean, to me, you seem like the kind of musician, one of the pure musicians that maybe you're always trying to evolve what you're doing. Would you say that you still have that, mentality now? Like, you know, this far into your career, you're still thinking like I'm, looking forward rather than back.
Yeah, that's a good observation, and definitely more now than ever. I'm definitely more motivated to do something better than I did before. Um, I think I just never wanted to be one of those guys who people say, well, I like his early work, but then as it got older, he was like phoning it in or whatever those cliches that people have. I'm quite the opposite, and I think that's probably due to the fact that I've had successes and lack of successes, and some things do well, some things don't do that well. I've never had the huge breakout hit that like really defines you, and once that happens, I think that's when like motivation to try to better yourself um it might stop or it gets weird, but I've always just had like, it's always been gradual. It seems like now it's definitely on an upswing, which is wonderful, but I kind of have to thank the fact that I've never had like a some surprise hit that everyone, puts me together with some particular thing. And because of that, it's just me and my music. So whatever happens success wise is kind of unrelated to what I make, because you can't control what people are going to like. But thankfully, It's never been, I've never had like a novelty hit or anything like that, or anything that's really insanely big. And so I guess it keeps my music pure and
Yeah.
trying to
No,
chase after anything.
well, this is the thing. I mean, you left Megadeth at the absolute peak of their sort of commercial power. When they started moving towards, well, albums like Cryptic Writings and Risk. And what do you think that says about you, not only as a musician but as a person, that you were willing to sort of step away from something that was on paper a really sort of comfortable environment. You could have still be plugging away now doing the same things, and you've been very secure financially and the rest of it. But to emigrate like halfway across the world and do something
Yeah.
so unique, like what do you think that says about you as a person and musician? I mean, it's probably not something you thought of at the time, but looking
Well,
back, that takes like a lot of courage, I guess.
well, that's a nice question. I think you hit the nail on the head when you said words like comfortable and secure. It was definitely that. But when you're comfortable and secure, it gives you time to reflect on what exactly it is you're doing and how much you really, really like what you're doing or what you'd rather be doing creatively and musically. And of course, having been like broke and homeless at one point, I could definitely appreciate the security and comfort of where I was at my point in that point in that career. But musically, I had so many more different musical things to say that I just didn't even think twice. I knew that musically I would rather be doing something else. And even if I wasn't as secure, I would be 1,000 times happier to get this music, like I was saying before, getting it out of me and
Yeah,
getting it out and getting it done. So it wasn't really, I don't want to say it was a very courageous, um, maybe to some people might think so, but then some people might think it was really stupid to throw away a comfortable living in music, which is really like winning the lottery. But for me, it's just I knew that I had so much more to offer musically than just being a lead guitar player in a great metal band. I mean, it was a great metal band. I loved it, but I had these big musical soundscapes and these big things that I wanted to say, musical emotions that are not fit for Megadeth. And so it was kind of a no-brainer artistically to leave at that point. Mm.
you know, and I've sort of researched this over the years as well. And how did it come about that you moved to Japan? Like, what was it like? I'm guessing it wasn't you just kind of like put your finger on a map and just thought I'm going to go there. Like, what was what were the chain events that led to that? And at what point did you think I could be here like permanently? Like, what can you talk about? Maybe the events that led to that. I'm really interested in that.
Well, long before I even thought of ever living in Japan, I was learning Japanese as a hobby.
Mm,
Being on tour around the world for so many years and so many months out of every year, you gravitate to certain places. And I always loved being in Japan. So, kind of almost out of respect to the staff and the fans who treated me so well, I wanted to like learn a little bit of the language and get to know them a little bit better. And so I would learn the language while I was on tour. Everybody does different things. People play video games, people read books, watch movies, and I wasn't interested in that stuff so much, but I was definitely learning the language as a hobby. So by the time I left Megadeth, I was pretty close to fluent, if
mm.
not fluent already. So at that point, like maybe 2, 3 years before I left Megadeth, I was listening to Japanese music exclusively. The music that was on the charts in Japan, which was so completely different from the music that's on the charts in America or the UK. Um, I just gravitated to that music and I really wanted to play that music. And there was no, even if I left Megadeth, there's no place in America that I could be able to play that music. So I kind of just followed my musical dreams, to use a cliche. I knew that the music that I wanted to make was in Japan, and I knew that if I wanted to reach any of the potential that I had to go to Japan and get immersed in the domestic Japanese scene, as opposed to the international scene, which I had been a part of for several years. It's a completely different scene in Japan. The domestic scene is the big scene in Japan, and there's a very niche audience for international artists in Japan. So yeah, that's that.
No, yeah, I really want to get into later on, by the way, talking a bit more about the musical sort of landscape in Japan. But I think the next question I had was, I mean, you're quite a popular, figure in Japan in terms of, musical personality. You've, appeared on countless TV shows. I mean, I'm really impressed to read about the composition you did for it's like a government theme
Oh,
that's
yeah.
at events now. I mean, that's it's hard for me to sort of get my head around it I'm not really there and I don't really understand the media there. But I mean, is there like a level of fame there that you've had to get used to? Like, I mean, walking down the street, is it like that, or can
Uh,
you still sort of,
what really kind of broke out was when I started doing television.
boss?
Um, I didn't intend on doing television when I went there. I just wanted to get directly into the Japanese music scene, which luckily I did get into rather quickly. But by a complete chance meeting, I was asked to do a television show, and the television show kind of took off. And it was just a pilot, and it went into 4 seasons, and then that what's the word you say? I can't speak in English. That
Snowballs?
Yeah, it kind of snowballed into an 8 season program. And then when you do that, all the other television programs say, "Who's this new guy?"
Hmm.
And you wind up getting on a lot of different other television programs. And I got managed by a television production company rather than a regular management company that manages rock musicians. As soon as I got on that pilot and it went really well, I got managed by a television production company who still manage me today. And at that point, I was doing television programs of every possible thing, having nothing to do with music, variety shows, comedy shows, games, politicals, language. I did some movies, I did some major commercials, all that kind of stuff that I never intended to do. I really just went to play music. Um, but doing that kind of stuff exposes you to the type of people who don't know anything about rock music,
Yeah.
pop music, metal music. So then you really, and especially with a look like this, I mean, I would stand out anyway in Japan. And so, doing a lot of that stuff. If I go out and I don't tie my hair up or I don't wear a mask or whatever, I will get noticed, but it's really nothing to complain about. But I just kind of keep it down because where I live in Tokyo is very, very crowded. So if I were to like get noticed, it would just kind of be a little bit of a drag, but it's not a drag because I mind it. It's just becomes time consuming, and it just makes a scene that I'm just not really don't have really enough time to deal with all the time. So
I was,
I don't mind that part of it.
I mean, I was trying to get like a picture of where you live. Am I right in saying that it's Shinjuku
Yeah,
in
yeah.
Tokyo? I mean, it does look crowded, like you say. It does look like the way that a British person that's never been to Tokyo would imagine it to be. But I mean, I'm looking at pictures like the National Garden, and it looks really beautiful.
Yeah.
Especially during blossom season, which I think is later in the year, right? But I mean, has that environment like does that influence your music?
Oh, I'd love being in a metropolitan city. Um, that's a big thing for me, and I believe that Tokyo, maybe it's the most populated city. I don't know.
It could well
It,
be, yeah.
it's a metropolis, and it's bustling, and it's extremely colorful, and there's a million things to do 24 hours, and everything. It's like New York on steroids, and
Okay.
the thing I love about it the most is it's completely safe. Um, there's just
Yeah.
no crime. I mean, I'm sure there is if you look for it, if you go out of your way to find trouble, I'm sure you could find it. But I've lived there 20 years and I've never seen any kind of street crime, and I've never felt the slightest bit of fear of any kind at all hours of the night. I want to walk out and get something at 4 in the morning. That's fine. And I live right next to the red light district. Um, it's really that kind of safety is just once you get used to that, man, I'm telling you, I can't really make that strong enough because I love that about it. You know, you look at it and it's extremely busy place, but it's really, really quite safe. So I love that. And I think the overall musical climate has influenced me more than the city itself. You know, I've lived in LA, I've lived in San Francisco, and they're both proper metropolises. Um, but um, but Tokyo, you know, I'm immersed in Japanese music. When I'm not making my own music, I'm working on other music for other artists very often,
Yeah.
and a lot of collaborations. And I do a lot of work with a group called Momolito Clover. We do a lot of festivals together, and it's just a big world of Japanese music going on in my head, whether it be my own or others. So that can't not influence me.
This is the thing. I mean, I'm quite aware of your Tokyo Jukebox trilogy and those albums you've done. Um, at what point did you really feel like you wanted to start, championing, Tokyo music? And has that been one of the projects that maybe most proud of in terms of what you achieved with that?
The thing that I'm proud of, you know, of course, I'm very pleased with the records, but what makes me the most happy about those records is when I tour outside of Japan in other countries and I play those songs for non-Japanese people. First thing is they think that their songs are originally mine.
Yeah.
And because I've done them in such a way that they sound like my albums, my original albums, because I've completely overhauled them, and for better or for worse, I've totally Martified these things. So they would be right in thinking that they're my songs. But it kind of like gets a lot of people into the rabbit hole of Japanese music and Japanese culture. So when I go around third, fourth time in different countries and cities, and people come back and say, "Wow, I discovered this thing of this Japanese artist because of you," or because of your Tokyo Jukebox album. I'm starting to learn a little Japanese, and I'm going to Japan for a homestay, or
Yeah.
those type of things make me feel really, you know, proud of the whole thing because I'm basically just doing what I love to do. You know, I love the songs and I love making my own arrangements of them. And then the fact that that is inspiring people to get interested in Japan like I was, you know, I was very casually interested in it. But sometimes those casual interests can spark off life-changing things. So if I can play that tiny part in anyone's life, that's something that makes me real proud about.
No, that's a great answer. And I think it sort of, moves nicely into my next question. But, as a Japanese citizen now, um, when you do go back to America, when you go back, to LA, to Washington, where you're from, how has your perspective on not just the US, but I suppose the West in general changed? I mean, especially when you're talking about how safe it is in Tokyo, do you get back and think like, I have to get out of here?
Uh,
um,
uh, Good question. Yeah, actually, I'm a resident of Japan. I'm not a citizen of Japan.
okay.
I'm a citizen of America, resident of Japan. Um, it's um, it's not bittersweet. Maybe it's a little bit bittersweet because when I come back to America, like I'm here now, um, I get to visit my mom who lives in LA, so I feel like I'm at home here. but I also feel like I'm at home in Tokyo. Um, and I want to be in two places at once. I've got a lot of friends and family here in America, and I miss them terribly. But I also have a complete life in Tokyo, with a lot of my work, and of course my wife is in Tokyo, and friends and business people, and very rooted there as well. So that feeling is bittersweet, but as a country, it's very strange for me because I don't really know who anybody is anymore.
Right.
I don't know who the celebrities are. I don't know the topics that people are talking about, and that feels very weird. That feels like almost like a science fiction where
Yeah.
you're cryogenically frozen, and then you go back, and all the faces are different, the topics are different, and of course the slang is different. And I don't know if you've noticed or not, but when I'm speaking to you, I know you're in the UK, right?
That's right. Yeah, the northern
Yeah,
part of the UK.
I'm speaking to you, but in this way, I'm probably speaking the same way to American people. I don't think I've used any.
Hi, Marty. How are you doing?
Hey, how you doing? Good to see you again.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for joining me a second time. I still don't know what happened last week. It seemed like it booted us both out at the same time, actually.
Oh, no
Uh,
worry.
but yeah, we were. Yeah, I was really enjoying speaking to you, and I feel like we were getting to some interesting things. So we'll try and pick up where we left off.
Cool.
You were
Likewise.
you were talking about how different it is living in Tokyo to LA and America, and how you're kind of out of the loop with some of the Western culture. So I wonder if you could talk maybe a little bit about that. And I suppose the second part of that question is, do you know, like living in Tokyo the last 20 years, is that a very different sort of environment for you, like creatively? Like, are you still like inspired by the same things? Do you still take inspiration, influence from the same things, or has that changed with the time?
Okay, well, yeah, last time I spoke to you, I was in LA, and now I'm in Tokyo, so it's kind of perfect
Yeah,
to
precisely. Yeah.
that question. Yeah, I mean, once you get used to living in a place like Tokyo, um, you kind of get reverse culture shock when you go back home. I grew up in America and lived in LA, so now I'm more used to being in Tokyo, and I'm used to the safety, and I'm used to it's it's relatively everything is kind of subdued compared to America. And it seems like when I go back to America, there's always some topic. There's some topic that everybody's just getting all crazy and outraged about. Some topic. It's probably something that the media just made up or something, but people are talking about some silly thing. And I think that in Japan, people get less excited about whatever the latest topics are, and you have to kind of search for those kind of things to get upset about it. But in America, it's like they try to keep shoving bad news down your throat. Is what I noticed this last week when I was the short period of time I was there. But at the same time, America has like big, wide open spaces, and you have this feeling of like air, um, and just not freedom, but like there's like more space to move around in. In Japan, everything is kind of cramped, and everyone is very, very adept at making use of small spaces. Buildings go upwards rather than outwards. Um, and things are very uh, they're made in such a way that you don't want to take up space, valuable real estate. In America, it's kind of like it feels luxurious to have a big open spaces. but in Japan, it's more about uh, having things being useful. I don't know if I'm making any sense, and you can probably scrap everything I just said unless something sticks out to you, but that's what's like in my mind.
No,
But
it does make sense. Yeah, and I think it's interesting because to me, it's almost like those cultural, behaviors are kind of the wrong way around. Because I think you're talking about America and the scale of it, and all the open land and air and spaces. You would think that that would sort of mean that would sort of reflect in the mindset, um, rather than being the very sort of anxious news hysteria sort of thing that everyone's plugged into. And you would think that, the way of life that you've described in Tokyo, that would lend itself to sort of maybe the American mindset of everything being very rushed and hectic and, you know, so that's interesting to me. Yeah.
well, maybe like where I live right in the heart of Tokyo, which it's like, I guess, New York on steroids kind of thing. It's a 24-hour um, bustling metropolis, maybe the biggest in the world. But the safety is next to none. I could
Mm.
walk out at 4 in the morning, drop my wallet on the sidewalk and forget about it for a couple hours and pick it up a few hours later.
Yeah.
Um, it's a very unique feeling, and you don't kind of have that looking behind you kind of feeling that you might have in other metropolitan cities.
Yeah.
But musically, definitely, there's no question that the experiences that I have in Japan influence my music in a very big way. Um, just living wherever you live, you're going to be influenced by the people around you, the sounds, the background music in restaurants and stores, and just daily life sounds. You're going to be influenced by that. But on top of that, of course, I'm doing my own music, but I also play with a lot of artists. I produce other artists. I record with other artists. I play shows with other artists. I'm playing a festival tomorrow with a group called Momoito Clover, and it's very, very Japanese music. And so, like, the Japanese musical style, which is really the reason why I came here in the first place, it definitely seeps into my music in so many different ways that couldn't happen if I didn't live here in Japan.
I wanted to ask as well. I mean, the different ways of life that you've described really well there. What would you say are some of the biggest things that you've maybe learned about yourself in the last 20 years in this phase of your life? And there is another part of this question that I'd like to get into, though. But for now, yeah, I'd be interested to know what you've learned about yourself. Maybe there isn't anything really profound. Maybe there is.
No, that's a good question, man. I think that the first thing I learned is that home is where you make it. You know, you can be at home anywhere. Um, I probably learned that from being on tour for the previous 20 years before I moved here. Every different country, when you go two, three, four times to the same place, you kind of feel a little bit of a home connection. You know, if you know the way around certain streets in Paris or Milan or London or something like that, even though you didn't grow up there or live there, it's kind of like a tiny little home base. And you get used to these little home bases. And then, so living in Tokyo, nothing could be farther from the culture that I grew up with in America, in Washington, D.C. But I feel extremely at home in Japan. Doesn't necessarily mean that I belong. As a foreigner, I don't think I could ever belong. Like, people use that word a lot. I felt like I didn't belong. Um, I'm American, and I'm in Japan, so it's like I wouldn't expect to belong, and it's not the end of the world if I don't belong. Um, it's about coexisting, and coexisting in a way that both sides get something good out of it. And I think a lot of people, when they move to a different country or even a different state, they go with the goal of belonging to a certain group or a certain clique or idea or something like that. And I think maybe what I've learned is that I absolutely have no desire to or illusion of belonging. It's a completely different race. It's a
Yeah.
completely different race, but I absolutely love coexisting in this race and finding my little niche in this society. And yeah, it's a very interesting concept that
No,
I think once you grasp that, you can live anywhere.
yeah, and I suppose to expand on that, we spoke last week about some of the media work you've done in Japan. You know, you've done all the TV shows, and you implied that maybe that wasn't something that came most naturally to you, but you pushed yourself into that because you wanted to immerse yourself in the culture. Do you think part of that was maybe you trying to belong to it? Maybe there was that kind of vibe.
No, not really trying to belong. I'm just trying to do something good, do something, um, become something that people can't do without, so to speak. Like, say, if you're a musician or whatever job you do, when you come in, you're like nobody, but you want to work yourself into a position that at some point the people around you need to have you around. You know what I mean? You want to develop whatever it is you do, make it something that they didn't know that they needed, but they actually do need.
To
And so
contribute?
I was
Yeah,
just trying to do my best, and at the same time, n- I would. There's many reasons why I did a lot of television and media that had nothing to do with music. The first one is to hopefully draw attention to my music, which is my real gig. And the other one is obviously financial benefits. The other one would be, there's absolutely no better way to learn the language than to be put on the front lines of a TV show and have to come up with something interesting about something that you don't care about. That's something I definitely learned. Just about anybody on TV, the biggest thing that they're doing is acting excited about something that they absolutely couldn't care less about.
yeah.
That is something that is an art that I didn't really take to right away. I'm like, how am
Mm.
I supposed to care about Japanese pottery? I don't care. But you're on the spot, they're filming you and you got to come up with something interesting to say in a different language than you grew up with. So I started getting addicted to that challenge of, can I really do this? And the hardest one was I did this television program. It was about makeup. These girls were doing these makeup makeovers, and I was a judge, and I had to like talk about these girls doing makeup and makeup makeovers, and like I can't think of anything that I care less about in the entire world. And so it was a big challenge to like get excited. Well, she looked better with the foundation on after the blush, but when she put the blush on after, it was like, this, you can't go to school to learn a language and get this kind of great education in it. So at that, I really got addicted to what a blessing the educational thing I was getting out of everything from
Yeah.
doing television and media. So I got into that.
No, that's an amazing answer. Yeah, and yeah, the thing I was going to ask before is I would like to chat about your. So am I right in saying that you've got an autobiography coming out later this year?
I've got a what?
An autobiography, a memoir
Yes, that's
coming out later this year.
right.
So I think the first question around that is, I mean, why now? And I think the second part of that is, so I spoke to had the chance to speak to Geddy Lee from Rush last year, and he's just done his memoir. They're very sort of deep. There's a lot of like quite shocking stuff in there, really, about his life. You know, growing well with his parents. You know, have been persecuted in concentration camps, and he said that unpicking a lot of his his life and his ancestors' life as quite cathartic. And certainly in terms of dealing with like the loss of Neil Peart in Rush, it was very sort of therapeutic. And I was just wondering what kind of experience you've had doing yours, if it's helped you unpick anything from your past or your present, for that matter.
Wow. Well, I know a little bit about Geddy Lee's story, and
Yeah.
it's absolutely fascinating, and there's a lot of hardships that you wouldn't know about it if you're just a fan of his music. So, like you said, I think it's going to be shocking for a lot of people, and thankfully, and very luckily, I haven't had that kind of um, really horrible experiences in my life, nor have I had like, you know, near death drug experiences, overdoses, or anything like that. Um, so I've always thought that my story was not going to be that kind of sensational story, like a lot of times you see in this, like a Geddy Lee type of story. Um, but so many times over the years, people have been asking me to do it because, dude, what you're doing, no one else has done what you've done. No one's left a major rock band to start in a different society and then eclipse your first success. I mean, what is up with that? I was just doing it, but like so many times people would talk about it in that context. And then I started to write things, and then the Megadeth people, they all have written their own biographies and stuff, autobiographies. I was the only one who hadn't. And oddly, I was the only one in the band who was completely sober throughout the entire time I was in that band. So I would have an outlook that is very, very accurate and from a different standpoint from the other guys. So I think there's interest in that. And definitely the transformation to Japan and Japanese society. Um, Putting it all together, it started to look really, really interesting. And then a lot of publishers got excited about it, more excited than even I was. And so I started to really dig deep into what I had to write about. And it turned out to be quite a lot of things. And you don't have to have the really tragic near death drug experiences to share what went on in my life and my feelings towards the people around me in my life. And I think it will open a lot of eyes because people, maybe they see me as, if they see me as like this guitar guy who fucked off and went to Japan. That's kind of to sum it up, it's like, oh, he's this guitar, I hate this word, but they say it a lot, virtuoso. He's this guitar virtuoso and he speaks Japanese and he went to Japan and I don't know what the fuck happened to him. So that's where it ends for a lot of people outside of Japan. Of course, my hardcore fans know so many more details, but even the hardcore fans don't know anything that I'm putting in this book.
Yeah.
The criteria is things, personal things, um, things that you never talk about in interviews, first love, first sexual experiences, divorce, marriage, and all those things that I really don't like to read other people's stuff in interviews. I like to read that in an autobiography where it's like
A sacred
there's
space.
not hiding anything. So that was my criteria, and it came out. We're still editing the very final parts of it, but I'm very, very pleased with it, and I think people are going to see me in a different, more personal light when it's out
Yeah.
for sure.
I mean, I'm a big metal fan myself. I don't want to like, um, sort of sling shit at the average metal fan, but I suppose there probably are some people that think, oh, Megadeth were an amazing band. He thought he was too good for the band, and he ran away and did his own thing. And some people do have a hard time sort of computing with that. So I can understand what you mean. Why people say you kind of went to Japan and did your own thing, and there is that tag, that virtuoso tag, where it's almost like there is like a pretentiousness attached to that, and you never really struck me as that kind of person, really. So
Well,
yeah,
thanks for saying that. That means a lot. It's totally true, and I just don't like the word anyway, even though it's pretentious or not. It's just not what I'm about. I'm trying to like make music, first of all, for myself that I get off on, but trying to make music that makes people feel good, and whether or not that requires things that impress people on the instrument, that's completely unrelated. Um, but as long as people like what I'm doing, they can call me whatever they want, and I really don't mind. But a lot of times people try to sum it up. You don't have a lot of time to talk about people. Say, oh, Marty Friedman, he's that guitar virtuoso who fucked off and went to Japan. I don't know what he's doing, some TV game show or something. I don't know. So like that's where it becomes a synopsis like that. So in my autobiography, it'll be a lot of like hopefully inspiring things because I think a lot of people want to do crazy shit, like leave a very comfortable, successful situation and chase a dream. I mean, it sounds like a cliche, but it's exactly what I did. I took the huge risk and I started from zero and I did pretty good at the end. And I think if people get inspired by that and maybe think twice about sticking in a job that they don't like and just go for something that's out of the ordinary and take a lot of risks. And I think people will find that part very interesting,
yeah, no,
hopefully, and inspiring as well.
no, that's another amazing answer. And I wanted to ask about your relationship with the guitar, and I suppose there's two reasons behind the question. You did an interview in Guitar World recently talking about guitar solos, and I think you did a follow-up interview because they'd implied you misconstrued some words. You talk about guitar solos, maybe I'm not going to say the exact words, but people can look it up if they want to see it. Um, but it was interesting last week. You said that you have like ideas always swimming around in your head. And I wanted to talk about how your relationship with the instrument has evolved over the years. And if you're ever looking at that fretboard and you're thinking, I can't get this out, I can't get this idea out, how has your own playing sort of evolved? And one of the other interesting things as well is that, even listening to like Holy Wars back in the day, getting into metal myself, when there's that breakdown after the chorus and it goes into that Eastern lick, I think that caught so many people off guard. So that's been in your work for, as you say, a long time before you moved to Japan, hasn't it?
Sure. Yeah, well, I hope to answer the question in a way that answers it. I've always been interested in music from other countries and other instruments to be inspired by. So it's very natural for me, even way back then in Megadeth, to play ethnic sounding things. Just, someone could say, just play in this space, and just without even thinking about it, I would play something that sounds kind of ethnic. So that's kind of normal. And of course, as you um, pile on experiences, every country I go to, every situation I'm in, I soak up anything that's new to me. I just naturally soak it up. New melodic ideas, new. My favorite thing to soak up is new ways to do key modulations. I mean, if you, on my album, Drama particularly, I'm really, really happy with a lot of the key modulations. A key modulation is when you can really take a song that you've trained the listener to listen to and give them a jolt by a well-placed key modulation. You can um, you can bring tears out of people. You can bring chills out of people. So anytime I hear an interesting key modulation, be it in classical music or Japanese pop music has wonderful key mods, and anywhere I hear it, ethnic music, I put that into my memory bank. So I feel like I've gotten a lot better at key mods over the years, and that's been like the impetus to my guitar playing becoming better than it was ever before, because I'm playing in different keys, and different keys lend themselves to taking the song into an interesting place. Does this make sense? A lot of times people trying to develop techniques in their fingers and learning interesting passages and scales and difficult things. But my satisfaction comes from being able to create a bigger piece of music with some knowledge that's going to expand on a little melody and bring it into something where a person can enjoy a 5 minute piece of music better, because of my depth of chord use and depth of playing melodies in different interpretations.
Yeah.
That's where I look at the instrument and try to grow with that kind of stuff. And I'm pleased with that. So it probably just comes from doing a lot of music all of the time. Um, but that's where I feel like I'm still growing and thankfully still hopefully improving.
No, that's a great answer. And to round off, it'd be great to talk about Megadeth and the Budokan show that came together last year. Um, I think maybe fans thought that would happen um, sooner rather than it did, and I'd be interested to find out how that all came together and how it was for you as well, like playing those old songs in alongside Dave. And I know the band's changed over the years, but yeah, how was that for you? And to invite Dave and the band into your homeland.
Yeah, it was a very nice moment for a lot of people, myself and Dave probably the most. Um,
Because he's always
you
spoken so
know,
highly of
our
you.
Yeah,
So
I
this
mean,
is
we both love each other, and it was time for me to leave the band when I left. The only piece of unfinished business that we had was Budokan. Um, it was there when I was in the band and it didn't happen, and because it didn't happen, um, Dave was able to survive and live. Had Budokan happened back in the day, I don't know what would have happened. But so it was a tough time, but that was the only thing that was left between us that never really got rounded off, so to speak. And then, this was the first time Megadeth played Budokan. It was equally as important to Dave as it was for me, because we're both rock fans at heart.
yeah.
And growing up with Cheap Trick at Budokan and all of the big rock heroes of when we were kids, they played at Budokan, and it was just legendary. So we both wanted to play it, and we both wanted to play it together. So when Megadeth got the Budokan show, Dave got a hold of me. He said, "Dude, have you ever played Budokan before?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "You want to play it again?" And it was just the sweetest exchange. And the show couldn't have been any better. We just loved it. And to be completely honest with you, the band sounded better than I remember it sounding when I was in the band.
Yeah.
Um, it just sounded so great, and the audience was like smiles from ear to ear, and people were crying and screaming. It was just a different kind of night, and yeah, it was great, and it was a perfect reunion. And how could it not happen? I mean, we've been in good contact with each other, and it was a good thing to happen.
No, that's fantastic. And I think, I mean, is the door I mean, I suppose the door is always open for a recorded collaboration. Is that something you've ever discussed over the years, like maybe having Dave on one of your albums, or maybe not going on a Megadeth album, but anything really? Has that ever been a conversation?
Um, a long time ago, we've talked about certain things, but I don't think it really behooves either us to just do something for the sake of doing it. Budokan was really meaningful, um, and I loved it. And then we played it at Wacken Open Air in Germany a couple months after. That was strictly because I was playing there and they were playing there on the same day, the day before or something, and we were both in the same place, and we were still, for lack of a better word, we were still high from the Budokan show, and we're like, let's do it again for the Germans and
Yeah,
everybody at Wacken. And that was a very, very casual thing. It very organically happened, but I don't think the idea for us to like be planning things together is really gonna happen.
it
I
has to
think
be
both of
organic.
us are on a different career trajectory altogether. So but again, I would never say never. I have absolutely nothing but good feelings towards them, and I'm their biggest fan, and I know they support me in what I do. So never say never, but I just cheering them on from the sidelines.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. It has to make sense for the people doing it rather than, you know,
Yeah.
the people hearing it. It has to be organic. And so if your peers for such a long time were, your fellow thrash bands like Metallica, Slayer, Anthrax, and Testament and Overkill, who would you say are your peers now, like having lived in Japan for so long? And then it is the kind of other artists that you draw upon.
That's a super interesting question, and I really don't know how to answer it. Um, I really don't because I have such a strange and unique presence here in Japan. It's hard to say peers, but assume everyone's a peer. I've worked with everyone on so many different levels. Um, Collaborations with people. Like I said, I'm playing a festival tomorrow with Momoiro Clover, and they're four girls who I've done lots of festivals with them. I've recorded with them. I've done television with them. Work with them on every possible media, and they are one kind of act. And at the other time, on the other hand, I've done the same thing with a singer named Aiko Ananase, who was one of my reasons for finding J-pop and loving music here. And playing with her band allowed me to play with people from ex Japan and from Lunacy and the top Japanese bands. And I've worked with Yoshiki from ex Japan and everybody. I don't know if I don't want to say peers because I'm American and they're Japanese, and it's a different scene. My own solo music, depending on the show, is considered domestic Japanese music or it's considered international music. It was very, very strange when I played at the Summer Sonic in Osaka a couple years ago. Ariana Grande was there, and Macklemore and all these American artists were there, and I was there playing with my band, and
Hmm.
the Struts were there. Remember that? I was there with my band, but I was on the domestic side, so it's like international acts, and Marty Friedman's a Japanese act, and that's what I shot for when I came to Japan. That's what I wanted to do. I had been an international
Yeah,
act for so long. And even when I came to Japan, they still looked at me as an international act for so many things. But occasionally they lumped me in with the domestic acts. And so it's really hard to say. Like back when I was in Megadeth, it was easy. It's like you guys, and and the big four and all the thrash bands, and it's like you're all peers and stuff like that. That was really easy to calculate here in Japan. And then I'm playing, with Enka, traditional Japanese music singers who are in a different kind of world from heavy metal bands and rock bands and visual K bands. And of course, I've worked with visual K bands as well, like, Cross Faith and Man with a Mission. And we've recorded my songs together. And it's really, I have some weird place in the music scene here that really no one else has. So for better or for worse, it's just a very unique and interesting presence. I really don't know how to
No, it's a great
explain it.
answer. Yeah, no, that is, really sort of like a full circle answer about you being positioned with the domestic acts. It's almost like you found your place there, and yeah, great to hear you speak about Yoshiki as well, because I had a chance to meet him actually last year in person.
Oh,
Did an interview with
wow.
did an interview with him in London, and because I think he was playing the Royal Albert Hall, and yeah, really interesting man, and someone like yourself, really sort of pure artist, takes his craft really seriously, and yeah, I was doing some research on him at the time, and it was interesting. I think Gene Simmons from Kiss once said that if Yoshiki was American, he'd be one of the biggest acts in the world, and so I suppose there is, he's an example. I suppose like Crossfaith and maybe Baby Metal of some bands that have really broken big over here. So there is still, yeah, we are still receptive to things coming from that part of the world, which is great.
True. True that. Mm.
But yeah, well, it's been a pleasure speaking to you, Marty. And I can say now, it comes to the end, like I'm such a big fan of like your work, and
Thanks.
make like Rust in Peace was actually one of the first few albums that got me into music. So it's really exciting to chat to you about that. And
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it a lot.
yeah, never forget picking up a copy of that in like a secondhand store down the road and just putting it in. And when those drums came in behind that riff, like I can remember it now. It was just amazing. So yeah, do you think you'll be touring over here, like in the UK and Europe this year, maybe next year?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna tour UK and Europe and everywhere. Um, we're just in the process of planning all that stuff out. The only shows right now that are etched in stone are a couple of festivals in Asia and a Tokyo show, but we're gonna, I'm gonna do a whole lot of touring for drama. Touring is my favorite thing, and we're just we've got a couple of offers and trying to, you know, make the times work out in the schedules and make it a good time for everybody. And I'm sure I'll be announcing something over the next couple months where exactly we'll be touring, but it's absolutely going to happen, and hopefully sooner than later.
Awesome. Yeah, and I really look forward to reading your book as well. And I'm sure that'll interest a lot of fans and
Oh,
casual music
oh,
fans alike. So
yeah.
good luck with
Thank
the
you.
album.
Thank
It's out in a few weeks. So yeah, but
thank you.
yeah, thanks so much, and enjoy the rest of your evening. I think it's the evening in Tokyo, isn't it? So
Mm. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's been great talking to you, man. If ever, I wish everybody was as knowledgeable, as intelligent as you are. It's very easy to easy to speak. I appreciate it.
no, no, you're very welcome. Like I say, I can say I've interviewed Marty Friedman twice in a way. But yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, thanks very much for
Awesome.
the time. And I'll share like the
All
links
right.
to things when they're out, so hopefully you get eyes on them. But yeah, fantastic, and yeah,
All right.
much love.
Thank you very much. All right.
Cheers.
So
Thanks, man.
take
Bye.
care.
You too.
Thank you very
Bye.
much. Bye.